Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we are talking about finding the area of circles. Before we begin, tonight's homework is going to be IXL 7.AA.5 linked in Google Classroom, as well as a surprise Google Doc. This surprise Google Doc is something that you are going to do, and I will explain somewhere in this video what I want you to do. So you have to be paying attention to the whole video, or else you're not going to understand what the second piece of the homework is tonight. Okay, so finding an area of a circle, but before we begin, let's review circumference and diameter and radius and what those are. Okay? Alright, so finding circumference of each circle, rounding to the nearest tenth if necessary using 3.14. We are not going to use 22/7 in this case, so we're just going to use 3.14. Alright, for the first warm-up question, they are giving us diameter. So we're going to use C equals pi d. Then we're going to fill in. So C is about 3.14 times 35, and when we do 3.14 times 35, we find that C equals 109.9, and we don't have to round because that is the nearest tenth, so we give it a label. Number 18 here, we're given the radius, so we're going to use C equals 2 pi r, and C is approximately 2 times 3.14 times the radius of 3, and C is approximately 18.84. The direction said round to the nearest tenth. This is not to the nearest tenth, so the 4 says go on and round down. So we're going to write this as C is approximately 18.8, and you give it the meters. You give it the unit of meters. Okay. And then finally, we've got one with decimals, but that's no big deal. It is the radius, so we're going to use the radius formula. C equals 2 pi r. C is approximately 2 times 3.14 times 5.1. When you do all of that, you wind up getting 32.028. Round to the nearest tenth is 32.0 with a label of inches. Okay, now on to area of circles. We talked last week about the fact that every single shape has its own area formula, and a circle is no different. Okay, the formula for the area of a circle is area equals pi times the radius squared. Don't forget when you're doing this that you have to follow the order of operations. So it looks like a minus, so I'm going to undo that. Okay, that's multiplication here. All right, so exponents, PEMDAS, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, subtraction. The exponents are going to come before the multiplication division. So you're going to square the radius before you multiply it by pi. That is super, 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 super important. Okay? If you multiply pi times a radius and then square that answer, you will get a much, much larger than actual answer. Okay? Now, in this example, they show you how they came up with the formula. I don't expect you to have to know how they came up with the formula. Just know that it does have to do with the fact that this is the circumference, and they broke the circle into little parts, and this wound up being each side of this parallel looking thing was half of a circumference, and then the height of this was the radius, and so they used that to find the formula. But it's area equals pi r squared. This is what you are working with, okay? All right, so here's the first conundrum, the first problem that we run into. What if we're given the diameter and not given the radius? All right, hopefully some of you are shouting at your computer screens that if you're given the diameter, just divide it by 2. Since diameter is 2 radii, that means that the radius is the diameter divided by 2. So if you're given the diameter, just divide it by 2, and that will give you the radius. If they tell you, if you've got a circle and the diameter is 10, well, that means that the radius must be 5. Okay? So if you're given the diameter, just chop it in half. You have to use this formula, okay? Don't try to come up with another formula where you use D. Is there one? Yes, but it's more complicated than it has to be. If you're given diameter, chop it in half, use a radius. That's what you have to do. All right, so here's a couple of examples, but the key here is order of operations. All right, you do the exponents before you do the multiplication. So you can go through that at any time. I split these 4 questions up into 2 and 2. So I'll do the first 2 on this page, the next 2 on the next page. All right, so we want to find area. We're going to use 3.14 for pi. So here we have, the first thing we do is we write down a formula. Area equals pi r squared. Then we write area is about, because I'm going to put an approximation in for pi, 3.14 times 5 squared. Area is about 3.14 times, we have to do radius squared first, okay? And then when I put that in, I get that the area is about 78.5. And since that is rounded to the nearest tenth, I don't have to do anything except for give it a label, which is inches. And since it's area, inches squared. Okay? All right, I'm going to pick a different color to do the next problem. That's a little too... Okay. The next problem. Here, we are given the diameter. So the first thing we're going to do here is, if the diameter equals 16, then the radius equals 8. Now I write my formula. Area equals pi r squared. Area is approximately 3.14 times 8 squared. I have to do my exponents first, so I'm going to do 8 squared. 8 squared means 8 times 8, just in case you forgot. You can use your calculator to do the squared if you want, but it is good to know that. And then area is approximately 200.96. But they told us that they want to round to the nearest tenth. So now, since they want us to round to the nearest tenth, the 9 looks at the 6. The 6 goes up. Well, if the 9 goes up, then that means that this becomes 201.0, and our label is centimeters squared, okay? I put the 0.0 there because it shows that we rounded to the nearest tenth, not to the nearest whole number, even though those are the same things in this case. All right, number 3, 20 yards. This is a diameter. So if the diameter is 20, then that means that the radius is 10. Now that I have that, area equals pi r squared. Area is approximately 3.14 times 10 squared. 10 squared we shouldn't need a calculator for. It's 100 times 100. And then we shouldn't need a calculator for this next part either, because anything times 100 moves the decimal to the right twice. So it's 314. Obviously, there's no rounding needed on that one. So we just give it a label, which is yards squared. Okay. Now is when I'm going to tell you what you are to do for homework for this Google Doc. What I want you to do for your second part of your homework, besides the IXL, this Google Doc, is in this assignment, I want you to create a Google Doc with your name on it, and I want you to type in 3 uses for finding the area of a circle. So in the real world, think about things that we would need to find the area of a circle for. 3 things, type them into a Google Doc, send them to me, and then click submit when you do this so I know that it's done, and then I can check it and I'll give you credit for that. It's an easy assignment as long as you've been paying attention. All right. And then next we have, this is a radius of 1.1. So we do area equals pi r squared. Area is approximately 3.14 times 1.1 squared. Area is approximately, let me just do 1. It should be 1.21. So 3.14 times 1.21, and then area is approximately 3.7994, which is definitely not rounded to the nearest tenth. So when we round it to the nearest tenth, we get 3.8, and our units is meters squared. Okay? All right, 2 more problems that I want to talk about is, now we're given this situation where they want us to find the area of the shaded region. Well, I'm not going to have a special formula for half of a circle or a semicircle. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find the area of the whole circle and then divide it by 2, because that will give me what half of a circle is. So this 5 inches here represents a diameter. If the diameter is 5 inches, then that means the radius is 2.5 inches. So I write area equals pi r squared. Area is approximately 3.14 times 2.5 squared. Area is approximately 3.14 times 6.25. Area is approximately, did I do this whole thing? 19.625. Now, that represents the area of the full circle. This is half of a circle. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide this by 2, and I'm going to get 9.8125. They want us to round to the nearest tenth, so 9.8 inches squared. And then finally, the last problem here is they want us to find the area of just this shaded region, which is 1/4 of a full circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the area of the full circle, and then I'm going to divide by 4, and that will tell me the 1/4 of a circle. So I go ahead, this is the radius, so area equals pi times 6 squared. I do everything, I wind up getting that it should be about, the whole circle is 113.04. That's the full circle. So then I divide that by 4, and I find that the area is approximately 28.3 feet squared after I round to the nearest tenth, and that's your answer. All right, good luck on the assignment. Don't forget that Google Doc that I explained in the lesson, and don't forget to hit like or subscribe. See you guys tomorrow.